So I'm here with Dr. Nowak. Dr. Martin Nowak, and it's a pleasure to have
Great to
you.
see
Thank
you.
you so much for taking the time to visit with me.
Thank you.
And the occasion is the release of his newest book, which is Beyond. And before we talk about the book, I wanted to talk about some of your other work. So you study evolutionary dynamics and mathematical biology, which sounds incredibly fascinating already, and game theory. And tell us a little bit about your work that you do at Harvard on evolution.
So I'm fascinated by the concept of evolution, by evolutionary biology, by questions that arise in evolution. So there's a famous statement that nothing in biology makes sense unless seen in the light of evolution. This has sort of motivated me for much of my research career, looking at everything with the lens of evolution, at the same time realizing that evolution is a mathematical theory, and therefore we can use the tools of mathematics and mathematical analysis to really ask questions in biology and to make progress on those questions.
Yes, and it's fascinating that biology itself is a discipline that you can describe mathematically. We tend to think more that questions about solar systems and basic physical laws, that those are obviously very mathematical. But even biology, this kind of messy contingent process, also seems to have a mathematical basis to it.
That's right. So physics has had for quite some time a very intimate connection with mathematics, and Kepler was the first person, in my opinion, who believed in the physical reality of mathematical calculation. It is unthinkable to imagine physics without mathematics. And in biology, this started a few centuries later, but it was realized very early on that evolutionary theory, mutation selection, as proposed by Darwin, is actually very amenable to mathematical description, and it's almost in the sense that it's necessary to do these calculations, because only the calculations can give you a rigorous insight into the workings of evolution.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Now, one way that people often think about evolution is you look out in nature, and when you think about the evolutionary process, we see a lot of death, a lot of competition in nature, and we see nature as being red in tooth and claw. And is that the whole story?
Yes, it was originally proposed by Darwin, and in the neo-Darwinian synthesis there was the emphasis on these two fundamental principles of evolution, mutation and selection. And selection, of course, natural selection means competition, that there's a struggle for survival of the fittest, and everybody is against everybody else and only the strong survive. This is kind of one aspect of evolution. It's a sad aspect in my opinion. But we realized sort of over the last few decades that there is, of course, also cooperation. And cooperation means that biological organisms help one another. So, for example, even cells give their lives to feed other cells with nitrogen, for example. So we have this other aspect. And in the last 10 years or so, I have started to propose that cooperation is really fundamental to evolutionary biology, as fundamental as selection. So I propose that we have to look at three fundamental principles, not two, and these three are mutation, selection, and cooperation. And cooperation is the architect of complexity in biology.
Wow, that's amazing. That's very fascinating. Another aspect of your work and your life I want to visit with you about today is how faith and evolution work together. Many people see these two as being in a fundamental tension or a conflict even. How do you view the relationship between faith and evolution?
So I never saw any conflict between religion properly understood and science, or between faith and science. And for me, these two approaches always worked together very well. And I think that I would also go so far to say that science, which is devoted to study the material world, that is the creation, is actually something that leads you closer to God, because you see the workings of God in the world everywhere where you look as a scientist. So science instills you with an awe, and this awe is for the beauty and for the greatness of the creation, reflecting, of course, also then the mind of the Creator.
And that's a wonderful segue to to talk about this new book. So you write in kind of the way I see it. You write in maybe two different directions. One is in the very technical, mathematical, biological, peer-reviewed research area, and then the other one is really this quest to find how God is present in all of these things together. So you had your earlier book, Evolution, Games, and God, which has to be the coolest book title I think I've ever heard of. But we got the new book now that just came out, Beyond, and this is very different from anything you've done before. So tell us a little bit about your new book.
Yeah, in this new book I'm trying to reach sort of a wider audience of people who are interested at this interface of religion and science, and I have tried to do this in a way that is unusual, in sense that this is not a standard non-fiction book, so this is not something where there's something being explained to the reader and the reader is absorbing it. So this is where there is a dialogue between people. So in this book you will encounter characters, and these characters talk to each other, and they are on their search for what is divine, but they want to understand science, they want to understand mathematics, and so they look at the world, and it's what I would call a Platonic dialogue, because there's also philosophy in it, but it is also a love story actually, and this love story ultimately is something that should bring people to fall in love with God. So that's the hope of the new book.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So yeah, that's really fascinating. Your approach in this book. Would it be fair to say that in your technical publications you appeal to the head, and in this book you appeal both to the head and to the heart?
I think this would be a very nice summary, and in the heart is somehow where we search for God, and it's sort of the heart that should lead you to God, together with sort of the reason. So you can find, I think you can find a way to God, in my opinion, both through science and through religion. And for me a strong argument for God is actually mathematics, because if some people might be worried that the material world is the only thing that is, and that science is the only worthwhile investigation, the question then always comes up, so what about mathematics? Because mathematics is not material, and is also not that which is studied by science. Mathematical truth is independent of scientific experiments, but progress in science absolutely needs mathematics. So we have the situation where this material world is very much dependent on something immaterial. And mathematics is not only immaterial, it's also eternal, because mathematical truth doesn't change. So for me, these steps, this dependency of the material world on that which is immaterial and unchanging, is sort of is a very clear step toward God, because these are attributes of divinity.
Yeah, I think you said it really beautifully in your talk yesterday, something to the effect that science is the study of the material world using the immaterial methods of mathematics.
Yes, I think that's a very good summary.
Yeah, that's a fascinating way to approach it, and I think your work and your new book and your witness, your joyful witness, I think are also ways that can lead people to God. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with me.
Very
It's a
nice
real
to meet
pleasure.
you. Very nice to meet you.